Days after the Christmas market attack in Germany resulting in 5 fatalities and more than 200 casualties, the lens is now on the West's faulty immigration policy that has led to giving refuge to extremists, this time biting them in their own backyard. European nations are paying a heavy price for sheltering terrorists. Germany, for example, the Christmas attacker there was the most wanted in Saudi. The Saudis had actually warned Germany and asking the Germans to extradite this attacker more than 7 years ago. All European nations are actually sheltering quite a lot of most wanted from in other countries. Bharat's most wanted accused have similar stories in other European nations and including beyond transatlantic this malaise extends to. Christmas market attacker was the most wanted in Saudi, like K terrorists Gurpatwant Panun or Hardeep Nijjar or Goldi Barar and so many others, plus other Khalistani entities who are operating in Bharat while living and finding citizenship and havens in foreign soil. According to sources, Germany Christmas market attacker Taleb Abdul Mohsen had left Saudi Arabia after being accused of rape and was implicated in serious crimes, and deportation had been denied, citing human rights concerns. Now, sources say the attacker Abdul Mohsen reinvented himself as a dissident, publicly declared himself an atheist and an ex-Muslim. The idea behind this was securing full asylum protection in Germany by portraying himself as a victim of persecution rather than a fugitive. He wrote threat messages against the German government, which the government ignored in the name of freedom of expression. He claimed that Germany was conspiring against him and against all Saudi asylum seekers. Protests by Germans against the German government to deport all immigrants have been witnessed. Almost 20,000 people protested against the government in Germany and demanded deportation of the immigrants urgently. The German far-right group also led protests, and the group says that the criminal had nothing to do with AFD, and AFD had no contact with the attacker. Pandit Satish K. Sharma with us, Sushant Sareen with us, Anand Ranganathan with us. Namaste, gentlemen. Many would say, ye to hona hi tha. Many others would think that exactly the same position that Bharat finds itself today, the Saudis are finding themselves, and the West now today, Europe and transatlantic similar situations, those claiming persecution are not necessarily the persecuted, they are actually illegals, wanted, criminals. Pandit Satish Sharma?
Pranamji, namaskar, Jai Shri Ram to you. Yes, it's a tragedy on a scale which Germany has not seen for a long time. And I think most of the German population is struggling to try and understand it. Maybe we can possibly contribute a small perspective. At a time of tragedy, it's often the first casualty is our capacity to judge it and understand what's going on. I would say that the first thing we have to realize is that putting all of the religious and the political dimensions to one side, what has happened is that a Christmas festival has been targeted. This is clearly an attack on the culture and on the national sense of well-being of a nation. That makes it a terrorist attack. The second thing is that this is clearly religiously motivated, and we can see that the person who attacked this community is identified by his actions. He was clearly not a Christian. He was clearly not a supporter of the German citizenry. And so the first thing I think the response from the authorities should be is to make their citizens feel safe. And there is a huge, shall we say, a negligence of this responsibility from the governments and the service agencies who protect these civilizations and citizens across Europe. This is beginning to be felt in the United Kingdom as well. Here in the United Kingdom, there is a very tangible and real sentiment beginning to coalesce, which says that the government of the United Kingdom, the government, most of the traditional governments in Europe are failing in those two responsibilities. One, to actually protect the citizenry, and secondly, is that justice also has an element which is punitive. It is a deterrent aspect which is intended to prevent. It's intended to send the message that if you engage in such activities, the response will be significant, substantial, and so substantial that another person would think twice before perpetrating it. There's been a complete abandoning of that responsibility. And I think until we see that in evidence, we are going to see the continuous decline in the citizens of Europe actually trusting their own governments and their own security agencies. That's the biggest casualty at this moment in time.
Dr. Ranganathan?
Anand, I want to go a little bit deeper than what Panditji has, with your permission. Look, anyone who cherishes liberty, equality, and fraternity stands today with Germany. My heart goes out. But I have to say this, we are reinventing the wheel here. Islamist extremists have perpetrated 31,221 terror attacks and killed 146,811 people worldwide since 9/11, said the reputed German newspaper Welt in 2019 in its incredible report 18 Years of Terror. That was 5 years ago. And that's an average of 5 terror attacks every single day for 18 years. Look, when will we understand that there is no such thing as radical Islam? Anand, if I read and follow chapter and verse of the book Biochemistry by Leninger or Steyer, do I become a radical scientist? The essence of Azan is, quote, no one has the right to be worshipped but Allah 4062. This is amplified through the loudspeaker 5 times a day, whole year round. Al-Kufr Milatun Wahida. Let non-believers take disbelievers as allies except when taking precaution against them in Prudence 328. Do not take disbelievers as friends unless they convert, and kill them if they refuse, 489. Look, a practicing Muslim who believes in the Sharia and every single word that there is in the Holy Quran is a good Muslim. While a Muslim who drinks, fornicates, indulges in idle talk or music, supports Muslim women who reject the burqa, draws a portrait of whosoever he wishes to, marries a non-Muslim, is homosexual, gives equal share of inheritance to females, and is fine with all his fellow Muslims being all of the above, is a bad Muslim. And Allah has defined just who is a good Muslim: 33, 36, 3, 132, 8, 2, 49, 15. And every single time, Anand, the apologists cringe at violence or retribution being ordered. They bring out the excuse of context or interpretation in order to hide the true meaning. In fact, I would say it is the Muslims who are Islamophobic. That is, they fear Islam. They fear to bring out the orders and the commandments of their holy book in its entirety on Jews, Christians, polytheists, homosexuality, apostasy, heresy, dress code, wife beating, blasphemy, because they fear being called illiberal and hypocrites. So they end up condemning and branding as radicals the Muslims who are faithfully following the fundamentals. They snare the fundamentalists but spare the fundamentals. And every serious Islamic scholar has admitted to this. And every single time the apologists cringe at violence, they do the same thing. The disbelievers of that time, polytheists, Christians, Jews, homosexuals, apostates, were seen to possess certain characteristics, and it is these characteristics that are condemned and ordered to be punished in the holy book. The orders, Anand, are not for the non-believers of that time. They are for anyone who possesses their characteristics for all time. It is specious to claim orders that apply to non-believers are meant for non-believers of that time, but orders that apply to believers are meant for believers of today's time. Just 10 seconds, Rahul, Anand. I spoke for tolerance, you cut off my tongue. I wrote against hatred, you cut off my hand. I walked towards liberty, you cut off my legs. I heard the dissent, you cut off my ears. I bowed to justice, you cut off my head. Of what was left of me, you befriended.
Sushant Sareen, will there be a change in attitude?
No, I don't
the
think
West.
so. Look, one, I'll join issue with my dear friend Anand Ranganathan. I'm not denying anything he has said. My only point is that what he says is true for Islam, is true for other Abrahamic faiths as well. If you read their texts, they are perhaps in some ways even more intolerant than the Quran is, right? The problem or the issue, however, is that many of those faiths have reformed or have moved away, and
Yes.
they do not have Sartan Sajuda in the way it operates in the case of Islam. So there is a reformation that has taken place in other faiths. It hasn't in Islam because the reactionaries in Islam prevent any kind of reformation taking place. So if you go by the text, then I think there's very little to choose between any of the Abrahamic faiths. That is one part of it. The second part of it is the real is today's problem. In fact, it's not today's problem; it's the problem of the century now. Of this rising trend towards violence and jihadism which is sweeping through the West, which is sweeping throughout the world actually. And problem out there is twofold. One is that many of these societies are diffident, they are scared, they are not politically confident, they are ideologically confused over the phenomena they are up against. We thought or we hoped that maybe that clarity would come post 9/11, when suddenly, the penny dropped. But the penny dropped and the penny came out because you had the leftists and the so-called liberals, I don't even consider them liberals anymore, come out of the woodwork. And one example we've seen with the kind of newspaper and headlines which came out after this attack in Germany, as though it was a self-driven car which drove into a crowd of people and mowed down people, right? Nobody was willing to say what exactly happened because you wanted to cover it up. And as the CEO of the National Public Radio in the United States says, truth is a distraction. Now, if truth is a distraction, then you can't speak it, right? You have to resort to lies, which is what the so-called liberal media resorts to all the time. So one is that problem. So you don't have the ideological clarity of the fight you are up against. Now, you can do the kinetics of this war, right?
Correct.
You can do the decapitation exercises, you can carry out military operations, you can do all of that. But how do you get rid of that mental virus which is affecting a lot of people and which is spreading, which is not receding, it's actually spreading.
Right.
And I don't think anybody has really applied their mind, anybody has really invested the kind of resources which need to be invested to combat that. What you have is the kind of nonsensical virtue signaling of counter-violent extremism which some United US universities and European universities have floated, which means nothing to no one, right? There's absolutely nothing to show for the billions of dollars that they have received and they have spent, perhaps on junkets, perhaps on conferences, which have yielded nothing. No, not a single impact they have made. So when you have this level of ideological confusion on one side and complete ideological clarity on the other side, you know which side this dice is going to roll. That is the reality.